Hey guys, Magnus Carlsen just did something incredible. While we were all going on about our lives, there's been a huge scandal in the chess world, to which I've dedicated a video. A guy called Brandon Jacobson, he has come out from his anonymity. He's a grandmaster from the US. He's played a chess match against Daniel Naroditsky, a 70-game chess match, starting each game with one a4, e5, rook a3. On the second move, sacrificing his rook with white and with black, and he demolished Daniel Naroditsky, one of the strongest Blitz players in the world. And chess.com banned Brandon, while Brandon later, a couple of days after being banned, said that he did not in fact cheat, and he insists that he is honest and didn't do anything wrong, was banned for nothing. I don't know whom to believe, but Magnus Carlsen kind of liked that opening and decided to use it in all of his games in Title Tuesday yesterday. And it was incredible, guys. I will show you all the games played by Magnus, and you will never guess how he did in the tournament. So every game he sacrificed 2 points of material, a rook for a bishop. Let's see how he fared. So let's start. Magnus Carlsen opens the game with one a4 and then rook a3. Horrible move. Probably two of the most horrible first moves ever available in chess. Probably the only combination of moves that is worse is going f3, e5, g4, and getting hit with queen h4 checkmate. But that wasn't Magnus's plan. He just wanted to sacrifice his rook. Now the usual response here, and the best move, would be e5, hitting this rook and then taking it. The computer gives rook e3 as the best move here for white, but Magnus wouldn't have done that. He would have gone probably b3 and sacked the rook, which he did in most of his games, in all of his games where he was allowed to. But the opponent didn't want this rook. Maybe he or she felt disrespected and decided, you know what, you're Magnus Carlsen, but don't humiliate me in this way. I won't take your rook. I don't need it. It's stupid. It's standing here on the third rank. What's he doing? What's it doing here? So then the sides both develop their pieces. The bishop now will not take this rook because it left the f8 square. So the gambit was declined by black. And slowly but surely, Magnus Carlsen did Magnus Carlsen things. He exchanged some pieces, rotated his forces. Yes, black is doing okay for the time being, even a little bit better, but black is an IM, international master, and white is a guy called Magnus Carlsen. You might have heard about him. He's kind of good at chess. And here, black, for some reason, decides to initiate a tactical skirmish. So probably why black decided that this is a clever move, because this rook is overloaded, guarding both of those pawns. So once it takes on a4, the bishop takes on d3, forking the queen and the rook. But probably black miscalculated something, but because in the resulting position, white has the two bishops advantage, white has this open file dominated, and white's position is better. Even though black can take this rook, there is another piece of fine tactics here. Knight takes f7, hitting both the queen and discovered attack on the bishop. So this position is practically winning for white, because white has two bishops for a rook, and Magnus converts it really easily because, well, he's Magnus. So there is nothing to be seen here. Black resigns. First game, 1 point out of 1. Let's see what happened next. Okay, now game 2, Magnus Carlsen is playing with the black pieces, and again he goes for rook a6, but again, somehow his opponents don't want this rook. Maybe his opponent was pre-moving and didn't pay attention to this rook. Somehow the bishop left this diagonal and now is unable to take the rook, so the opponents do not want to play by Magnus's rules. Maybe they are afraid of his prep in this variant with a sacrifice of a rook. And both sides play a normal game, with the only exception that black's rook is on a6, and it's maybe not the best square for the rook, but maybe later it will join the action via these squares, but it's still a far shot. We will see. Okay, so both sides maneuver. Black takes a pawn. Now Magnus Carlsen is a pawn up, but his knight is a little bit clumsy. White tries to take it. But black says, okay, fine, take it, because here I have a fork. And a series of exchanges follows. Now the material is equal, but black has an extra pawn because black has a rook for a knight and a pawn. So actually it is white who turned out to be a rook down. And here, being a rook down against Magnus Carlsen, as you might guess, is not the best thing in the world. He can maneuver a little bit, exchange the queens, and in the end game, he is the best player definitely of all time. Maybe you could argue that Jose Raul Capablanca, one of the world champions of the past, also can hold the title of the greatest endgame players of all time, but still Magnus is a bit better because he is Magnus and he lives in our time, and this is hopeless for white. Black just takes the bishop and white resigns. 2 out of 2. Now let's take a look at game 3. Will someone take this Greek gift, so to say, this rook, this Trojan rook? Okay, game 3, let's go. Will someone take this damn rook? Take the rook. Yes, finally. Black took the rook. Black is a Grandmaster Sokidze from Ukraine. His real name is Ihor Samonenkov. He's quite a strong Grandmaster. So Magnus Carlsen has just given a strong Grandmaster rook odds, exchange odds. So rook for a bishop means that black is up 2 points, 2 points of material. So let's see how the game develops. So white's advantage, so to say, is the fact that it has 2 bishops. This bishop is quite strong and this bishop is unopposed. But black has a rook. So how to use it? You need to open up some files. So here a series of exchanges ensues, and Magnus exchanges one of his bishops for the knight to create a material imbalance on the board. Now we have opposite side bishops. Dark squared bishop for white and light squared bishop for black. As you might know, opposite color bishops favor the attacking side. So maybe Magnus will attack. Let's see. Okay, g5. For the time being, it's his opponent who is expanding and taking some space. Very nice position for black. Still better, although not too much better, because it's in the balance and because this bishop is not too important here, because it's eyeing its own pawns. It will be good here probably. So will black do that with the bishop? Yes, rotating this bishop, classical maneuver. And now c5. Black is opening up some files for its rooks, because for the time being rooks do not have any scope. Okay, h3, just calmly maneuvering his pieces. This is what Magnus Carlsen does very proficiently. Now black's bishop tries to activate, but it's still eyeing white's pawns. White's pawns are on light squares, blockading all the infiltration. Queen d3, c4, queen drops back, and now b3. You should always attack opponent's pawn chains when you have the chance. This is the principle that has been formulated by Aron Nemtsovich, the great chess master of the past, in his book Mein System, My System. Okay, bishop g6, queen drops back. We have an exchange here, and now still black is of course better because it has a rook and white has just a knight, but this knight is beautifully positioned on this outpost. Another term that was liked by the late Aron Nemtsovich. This knight is very powerful here in the center, eyeing all those important squares in black's position, and you might argue that this knight is not worse than this rook that is just standing, protecting its own pieces, eyeing its own pieces. So okay, rook a3. I don't know what the meaning of this move is, probably overprotecting the c3 pawn. King maneuvers. Now I see then the rook wants to go to b3 again. You see this rook a3 maneuver? Magnus really insists on putting his rook on this square. So okay, further maneuvers, and now c4 again, a pawn break, attacking the enemy's pawn chain, as I said. Takes. Now this pawn is terribly weak, and it's a backwards pawn, but it will never come forward because this e5 square is overprotected by many white's pieces. So white is almost equal, although being down material. b5, black tries to initiate some counterplay, which is a wise thing to do, but now the knight jumps into d6, attacking both the rook and the bishop. b4, great move. Instead of retreating, black attacks and gets a rook of white, but the knight survives. Now white takes a pawn, and white wants to take another pawn, and white takes another pawn. And now black is up just 1 point of material. A rook for a knight and a pawn. And the position is equal according to the computer. Will Magnus Carlsen win this? Bishop retreats, knight c4, rook attacks the queen, queen drops back, bishop is put on a nice square here, but the knight returns to the outpost on e5. What is an outpost? An outpost is a square which cannot be attacked by enemy's pawns. For example, if black had pawns on the f file or the d file, they could have attacked the knight and it wouldn't be an outpost, but here it is a great post, an outpost. Okay, black is fine trading the queens. Black is already fine with the draw probably, especially considering the fact that its time is running out and the opponent is Magnus. Queen b3 attacks the rook. Queen c2 is a very important move here. Black doesn't mind giving up the bishop because here checkmate is threatened. So if white exchanges here, white will never win this. White could lose this already because the rook is too powerful. Now the rook has been activated and it's very active, and it can go to d2 and attack this pawn and take some of the pawns. And this could be winnable for black, even if you're playing Magnus Carlsen. So here Magnus Carlsen decides to take this pawn with a check and give black a perpetual check. This is a draw. So the first person to draw Magnus Carlsen in this tournament. Even though, given odds, it would be safe to say that this person should be happy about drawing Magnus, because Magnus never was in really any kind of trouble in this game, I think. So let's take a look at another game. Okay, round 4. Magnus is on 2.5 out of 3. Still within reach of the group of leaders. Will he catch them? e4, you know the move. a5, you know the drill. Rook a6. So will the opponent take this rook? Yes, yes. Very good, very good. The sacrifice has been accepted, and now the opponent tries playing very passively. I don't like this setup with a3. Yes, I understand that this prevents knight b4, but this is too slow. And now queen e2 and f3. I really don't like this move. Of course, I'm rated lower than this FM, FIDE Master, ZZ99 from Hungary, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, this is Hungary. So yes, I'm lower rated than this guy, but I still don't like this f3 move. I think you should develop here, maybe knight c3, developing your pieces and putting your other knight on f3. That would seem more logical to me, but who am I to argue? Okay, f3, e6, knight c3, d5, and now e5. And you see the problem with the f3 move. This pawn is really awkward here. This diagonal is weakened, this diagonal is weakened, and this knight has no squares. It only has this h3 square, which is not optimal. Okay, the knight rotates back. Now this seems like a French defense for black. Rook b1, also a weird move. I think white should develop here, and the computer agrees. f4 is the best move, then putting the knight on f3 and castling. And the rook b1 is too slow. c5, black strikes in the center. Already black is almost not worse, although it's down material. Magnus is outplaying his opponents. Knight b5, trying to infiltrate somewhere, but just takes, and bishop c5, and it turns out that black has already equalized here. The best move for black would have been queen h4, check, forking the king and the knight. The only defense is queen f2, and then black can trade and take this important pawn, and black is already a little bit better. But Magnus didn't see that. Magnus is a human after all, so bishop c5 is also a great move. Knight goes to b5 and castles. Black has finished its development, whereas white has some problems with developing, because even if the knight goes here, the king will not be able to castle itself because this square is taken by the bishop, so it's a bit unpleasant. Okay, bishop c3 overprotects the e5 pawn. Now the knight rotates. b4, white starts some counterplay of its own, but still it's not too pleasant for white because those two pieces are not participating in the action. Takes, bishop takes g1. Now there is a skirmish on the board. So if rook takes here, well, first of all, black had this check, but that could have been blocked by g3, so it's not that dangerous. But the problem is bishop a6, and you will lose that knight because it's attacked 2 times and pinned, and you cannot defend it. So that's why, rather than taking this bishop, white went knight d6, attacking that bishop. A good Zwischenzug, an in-between move. Bishop a6 is another great move by Carlsen, attacking the queen. This bishop will leave longer, but it is in no rush because the queen is under attack for the time being. Now b5, white doesn't have any time to drop back with the queen because then the bishop will survive, d4 for example, and then bishop e3 and black is fine. So b5 is the only move. Takes, and now the bishop drops back, and we see a position where black has 2 bishops for a rook and a bishop, and also black has a pawn, so black is a pawn down, but white's position is horrible. Black is already better, because this king cannot castle, because this bishop is very strong, and this rook is still not joining the action, and this bishop is eyeing the queen. Black has the 2 bishops advantage, it's almost a crushing position. So the queen drops back, now there's a check, and the queen tries to infiltrate, and it does. And I really am liking black's position here. White is holding on for dear life. Check, queen drops to a4, now attacking this 2 times, so the rook and the queen are both tied down to the defense of this bishop. Rook a1 tries to solve this problem, because if queen takes, there is rook takes a6, but black just drops back, and yes, the rook has been activated for white, but still the position is not too crazy. d4, now this queen has been opened up, it will jump in the action soon. Rook a7, if you take here, I will take here. This is what white thought, clever move, but just b5. Now black advances, and black is up material practically, because this rook again has not joined the action. If you could teleport this rook magically to a1, probably it would have been not as horrible, but then black would have queen h1 checks also. The king weakness is an important factor in this position. So bishop takes, white sacrifices the exchange here, and now both sides are on par in terms of material, but also the position is not easy for white because of the king safety, issues with the king safety. There is a check, there is h5 advance. The king cannot find a safe square, safe haven here. There are more checks, and here Magnus just calculates correctly that he can exchange everything, and his pawn will be pushed and will queen soon, and there is no perpetual check because there is this maneuver by the king, and white resigns. So now Magnus is on 3.5 out of 4. Will he win title Tuesday playing only this ridiculous opening? Let's see. So okay, you know what's going to happen here. a4, rook a3, black takes. Another GM, by the way, a GM from Lithuania, I think. Paulius Pultinevičius. Sorry for my Lithuanian. Didn't mean to make anyone angry. So this is the standard setup for this strange opening that's been used by none other than Brandon Jacobson in his match against Daniel Naroditsky. Check out my video on that match. So, by the way, what do you think? Do you think Brandon was cheating, or do you trust him? In his long Reddit post, he told his story of his life and explained that he's innocent. Do you trust him or not? Because I've spoken to many chess players and opinions differ. So interested to find out your opinion. Write it in the comments. And do you think Magnus was cheating in this? By the way, he was interestingly good, don't you think? I'm just joking, obviously. Magnus is Magnus. He's in a league of his own. So now nothing is happening on the board. Magnus is rotating his queen to create this battery in black's position. Standard maneuver in most of those b3 lines. Well, usually white puts the rook on a2 to enable queen to a1. But now you don't have to put the rook on a2. You already gave it up on a3. So that's the difference. Okay, queen e7. Both sides develop. And now black tries to attack. Black says, you know what? I know that you're Magnus Carlsen. Come on, Magnus Carlsen. You gave me odds, I will destroy you. And the position is really great for black. The computer says it's practically winning, minus 1.5. So it's not looking pleasant because this knight is stranded on this side of the board. This knight also cannot return to defend its king. So yeah, it's getting unpleasant. h3, but rook b8, and then queen joins this diagonal, and in future this will probably be dangerous for white. And the knight retreats, and now h4. And it turns out that white cannot go g4 here, because if white goes g4, there is a knight sacrifice here. And after this, you cannot stop mate. You can, of course, go with your rook here, but there will be queen h2 check and h3, and yeah, black is winning easily. So this is a problem. You cannot take here, because knight e to g4 is the same theme. Here, also, you cannot escape from queen h2 check, and if you go here, well, queen h2 check, and how to convert this easily? e3, I think. Yes, the computer agrees. So this is winning. So Magnus is in deep trouble. Will he survive? Will he get out of this like David Copperfield? Show his magic. Let's see. Queen c1, returning to defend its own pieces, probably from those squares. Knight rotates, bishop drops back. Knight rotates and puts more pressure on the g3 pawn. Knight goes back, very ugly, but probably necessary, because otherwise this queen was attacking this knight, and this queen was tied down, not able to leave the defense of its own knight. So knight b1 was necessary, but now takes. And if white takes here, then black just takes, and it's very good for black. So white doesn't take back. But here we get this position, which is -6. For black, an overwhelming advantage. Black has 3 extra points of material, but what's more important, it's a devastating attack on a king, and e3 really seals the deal. The position is horrible for white. Now this queen will never join the action because it's been blocked by this pawn. Very annoying. And now knight f4 jumps in. This is painful to watch. Will Magnus survive this? Do you think so? d4. Now this seals this blockade, pawn blockade of the queen. White sacrifices the knight, because if white goes back with this knight, for example, to d1, knight e2 is a deadly fork. So the knight cannot leave this post guarding this pawn. So queen f1 takes. Now black is up 6 points of material, and the rook joins in. The queen is centralized. Now the knight takes on g2. And demolition starts. It's -950 now, according to the computer. Absolute massacre. c5 now, opening up this diagonal for the bishop. Black is playing perfectly. Queen h2, rook b1. Another rook joins the attack. Black has 2 rooks, white has just 1. Rook f1, takes, f6. This bishop was standing here protecting this rank. Now it will have to leave. It takes a pawn, but the queen drops back, and it's not looking good. a5, trying to do at least something, but the knight checks the white king, and then the bishop joins the action. Takes, and the bishop just drops back, and black is up a rook. And this is winnable for even me, probably, against Magnus Carlsen. I dare say that I would have won this with black, and the player with the black pieces does the job nicely. c2, now there will be another queen. h6, still fighting. Magnus is still not giving up. g5, otherwise checkmate in 1 was threatened. But now e4 attacking the queen, and black in style promotes to a knight with check. And after some more checks, white resigns, because there's mate in 4. King f3, rook f1, king g3, queen f2, and this is checkmate. Probably there was a faster one, but this is the one that I saw. So yeah, first loss in the tournament, but Magnus still has the chances to come back and win it. Will he be able to do that? Let's see. Okay, now Magnus is playing against a female player, Mary Arabidze from Georgia, and I am. And Magnus opens up again with this rook a6 maneuver. For some reason, probably Mary was unaware of this idea of this innovative idea by black to sack the rook. So she didn't know that, and she went c4, disallowing the bishop to take on a6. So we get a relatively normal position just with the rook on a6, which is not too horrible for black, by the way. And here both sides maneuver, and it looks like some kind of a double fianchetto system with a fianchettoed bishop for black, and for white some kind of a g3 Grunfeld or something like that. So e4, knight e2, a3. Now this rook wants to activate, but white disallows that. Now there is an exchange, and black grabs a pawn. Black is a pawn up, but there is an important but. There is counterplay for white, down this file and down this file. And white has the two bishops. So the position is balanced. c5, b4, trying to blow open this file. e5, trying to strengthen this powerful bishop, wooden shield, as they call it. Takes, knight a4, and the rook is attacked, but the rook drops back. Finally, on move 21, this rook decided that this maneuver was too much for it. Bishop b4 overprotects this pawn and attacks this one. Now queen jumps on f6 to attack this square. Bishop b5. Here you can feel the power of the two bishops. This bishop is very strong and it is unopposed. Knight jumps in, rook d2, rook c8, queen b3, rook c7, and suddenly Magnus is losing. How come? Well, this pawn on a3 was surrounded by enemy's pieces with just one defender, and it fell, inevitably. And now this knight is about to fall, so it's getting very bad for black. Will Magnus lose again? Takes. Now white is up a piece, a full bishop, but there is queen a6, pinning those bishops to each other. Here there was a move for rook c4, the only move to defend, because there are two attackers. And Maria Rabidze found this move, and she's winning against the GOAT, Magnus Carlsen. But Magnus Carlsen goes b5, blowing open the position. You probably know the rule of en passant. That was the best move in this position, because if black takes here, there is b7. That's what she should have calculated. And rook b8 is followed by bishop b5 with a fork. And white is winning. White will take this rook later and be up a full piece. But she didn't see it with just 20 seconds on the clock. It's understandable. So after b5, she just took with a bishop. Also a good move, but loses some of the advantage. Now material is not equal. White has two extra pawns, but this bishop is very strong, and black has some compensation. c6. Now the king joins the action, and one of the pawns falls. In time trouble, white loses it. We are back to equality, but Magnus doesn't want to draw. He wants to win, because he's, of course, rated much higher, and he wants to win the tournament. So what will he do to do that? He tries to expand in the center. He maneuvers with his rook. Now he has this nice center, maybe some counterplay against white's king. The king drops back. The bishop is positioned on this great square. Again, the wooden shield. Rook b8. Maybe the rook will rotate here. Maybe it will take this pawn. Don't forget about this bishop, though. It will take it. Rook c4. Maneuvers. Both sides are low on time, especially white. White has just 3 seconds. So Magnus is also playing on the clock, trying to win. But Mary is not making any mistakes. She's playing great chess, and she's better. She's up a pawn, and black has no real counterplay. Black tries maneuvering, shuffling the pieces, trying to find something, but white wins another pawn. And white doesn't want to win this game, probably. The nerves can tell, because after you exchange the rooks, this is a dead draw. But you will not lose to Magnus Carlsen. You make a draw, also a great result. So Magnus makes a draw in this game, because opposite colored bishops are usually a draw. Even if you are up 2 pawns, they cannot march forward, because this king will just stop them, and this bishop will just move back and forth, and white cannot do anything. g4, bishop g5, king here, bishop here, king here, bishop here. So this is a draw. So Magnus Carlsen escapes again, but he doesn't win. and he's lagging behind. He now needs to win several games to catch the leaders in the tournament. Will he be able to pull that off? Let's see. I have to say that I guarantee you that from now on you will be even more impressed by Magnus's play. So let's see what he does here. He's playing with the white pieces against Nikita Schnadrigin, a strong FM from Serbia. Okay, let's go a4, rook a3, as usual. A sacrifice. Now a double feint keto. Will we see it? No. And this time the bishop goes to e2. In previous games it went to g2. Both systems are nice, and I think this reminds me of the Bent Larsen attack, but usually white plays f4 in this variation. The first move b3 and then bishop b2 and then f4, but the difference is that there is no rook here. Okay, h6, castles, a quiet position, and there are more exchanges. The queen, as usual, goes to a1, and this battery is kind of strong, but still black is practically winning because black is up a rook. Okay, c5, nice move, and now d4, trying to kill this bishop and create this pawn chain that will obstruct any attempts of white to create attacks. Knight c4, the knight jumps into this fine square. Bishop f3, at least the light square bishop of white has been activated. b5, a great resource actually by black. The computer doesn't like it, but I really do, because you might think, okay, let me take the rook, but then b takes c4 and your bishop is hanging. You have to drop it back, for example, to f3, and now c3. And this bishop is completely dead. It will have to go here, and then bishop takes c2, and the position is collapsing. So that's a nice idea by black. So taking the rook on a8 is not a great idea, but Magnus finds something better. He takes the pawn. And now, if you take it back, I can take this, and my bishop is protected by my queen. So that's the difference. So the rook is not attacking it, actually. So if you take, I can just take, and it's around equal. So that's what could have happened. But Nikita didn't take here with the pawn. He decided to go bishop e4. He miscalculated something, and now white is better because of this b6, and because white takes another pawn, and now the material is back to equality, and white has a bishop and 2 pawns for a rook. And look at this bishop, it's amazing. Again, another wooden shield. Sorry for my arrows. It's looking in all directions. It's positioned ideally. It's not worse than a rook, I think. So white is much better. So now there is an exchange of one pair of rooks. Then the queen tries to infiltrate, and it infiltrates, and here Nikita makes a fatal mistake. He forgets that Magnus Carlsen is the greatest endgame player of all time. So Magnus happily exchanges and goes knight a5, and the plan is really simple. b7, and then knight c6 or bishop a7, and queen in the pawn. And black can do nothing. Black is losing, so b7, as I said, and bishop a7, black resigns, and Magnus gets back into the game, into the race for the leadership in the title Tuesday. Let's see the next game. Okay, now Magnus is playing against a Polish grandmaster who's called Marcin Krzyżanowski, and he opens up with one e4, a5, rook a6. And Mr. Krzyżanowski doesn't like this. He doesn't want the rook. He goes knight f3. And then he says, you know what, I don't need your rook. He goes c4. And he doesn't take the rook, which was a fatal mistake of him, because he realized it's too late, that the rook was en prise. He took the rook, but he immediately went into an endgame which was practically equal, because black has not only a bishop but also a pawn for a rook, and black has the two bishops advantage, and computer, after thinking for some time, says that this is around equal, plus 0.13. And for Magnus Carlsen, being in an equal but imbalanced endgame means that he is going to outplay you, which he promptly does. He advances some of his pawns, he takes another pawn, now he's up a pawn. He checks, he attacks, he protect. You know this meme, right? So this is what he does. He does it expertly. Yes, white finds some counterplay, but the king of black activates, marches down the board. Now the pawns start marching. the bishop is activated, the king is activated even more. You should activate your king in endgames. Yes, the computer finds the position of black dubious, but humanly speaking, when you're playing against Magnus in such an endgame, you are practically lost. Rook a3, rook infiltrates via the h file, but somehow now the position gets much worse. If white finds this amazing move rook f7, so cutting off this file and then wanting to check black over there, or if, for example, bishop a1, you can go king b5, and then you can go here, here, and take all these pawns. And it's not looking good. But thankfully for Magnus, white doesn't do that. White gives a check, gives another check, but loses the f2 pawn. Now this pawn becomes very important. Check, drop back, go back, rook a2 check, rook defense. Yes, this is a passive square for the rook, but now the king with the pawns will march, and it's anyone's game, especially considering the time trouble. So white finally manages to take this pawn, but black has the pawns of its own, and the knight, which is very powerful, and the pawns march, and there is a check, and one set of points is exchanged, and now we reach a dead equal position. This is a dead draw, 0.0, but both sides are in time trouble. Will Magnus trick his opponent? Okay, let's see. Check, check. His opponent has just 3 seconds. Okay, his opponent tries to simplify the position, but it's not easy. Check, check. Check, check. Is it a draw? Whoops, it's already not a draw. It's already a winning position for black. How come? Well, you just give a check, give another check, take the rook, and then this king is cut off. And this king with the pawn will march forward and promote the pawn in an easy way. So this is how Magnus does it. And white resigns in this position. He makes it look so easy. He wins another game, and he's back in contention for the prizes in the title Tuesday. Let's take a look at the next game. So there are 3 more rounds to go. Magnus Carlsen is playing against a talented junior, one of the youngest GMs in the world currently, Ediz Gürel from Turkey. He has a very high rating, almost 3,000, but Magnus Carlsen doesn't respect that. He just gives up his rook and proceeds to develop in a calm way, and castles, a little bit of prophylaxis here with black, and again the same plan of creating this queen and bishop battery, a plan that has worked quite well for Magnus Carlsen so far. So d5, white tries to strike in the center. If you take here, you lose your bishop, so that's not good. That's why the knight goes to c5, and the bishop drops back. White goes forward, barreling down black's position with d6. There is an exchange here, and Magnus Carlsen exchanges the queens. Even though he's down 2 points of material, he decides that he's that good in endgame. So he can play an endgame down 2 points of material and not be afraid of his opponent. His opponent will be afraid of him because he'll be afraid of blundering something against Magnus. Okay, b4. No, the opponent is not afraid. He's too young to be afraid. He doesn't know that you should be afraid playing Magnus Carlsen. He sacks a pawn, but goes rook b1, and now the b6 pawn will fall later. But no, Magnus defends the knight with the knight and doesn't want to give Ediz Gürel this pawn. But Ediz Gürel says, okay, I'll take your both of your knights, because I'll go here and here, and 2 rooks are attacking the knights, and the knights are tied down in this Gordian knot. But Magnus here finds a great resource. Rook a1, the only move. Otherwise, he would have lost 2 knights for a rook with a losing position, but here he pins this rook to the king, so they exchange. Knight goes to c8, taking the b6 pawn finally, but no, not that fast. The bishop drops back to protect it. King f1, bishop c5, and now, yes, the pawn falls, but this is an endgame that is not easy to win against Magnus Carlsen, who proceeds to take the pawns, who proceeds to attack the rook, who proceeds to attack the rook again, attack, attack. And we get this position where black has 4 pawns and white has 3 pawns, but white has 3 pawn islands and just 2 seconds on the clock. And it's almost impossible to win this even with ample time on the clock, but with 2 seconds, it's hard to find the win. Maybe there is no win. Computer already thinks it's a draw. So the both sides maneuver here, some checks follow, and we get a draw, a repetition of moves. Edis Gurel makes a draw against Magnus Carlsen, so he stops his advance in the table of leaders, but still there are 3 rounds to go. If Magnus wins both, maybe we will see him in the prizes. Let's see. Okay, Magnus Carlsen is playing here against the famous Polish Grandmaster Kacper Piorun. He used to win, I think he won the title Tuesday one time, and he's a great puzzle solver, a strong grandmaster, 2900 rated on chess.com. So again, we get this position with b3, with bishop b2, and now knight maneuvers itself to c4, an interesting maneuver, attacking, putting pressure on the e5 pawn, not something that we've seen previously. Okay, so now the knight goes to d2, an interesting journey of this knight, right? Here, 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 and here. Okay, d4, double fianchetto, black tries to exchange and strikes in the center. Because if opponent's king is in the center, you should strike in the center, you should open up files. Kacper Piorun is doing everything, right? He has a dominant position, a great one. Queen d5 centralizes the queen, rook d8, everything according to the Soviet textbooks of chess. You should centralize your pieces, rooks should be on the open or semi-open files, etc., etc. This is everything textbook play by Kacper. So rook d1, h6, prophylaxis, some luft for the king, and now queen c5, trying to do something over this side of the board, taking the c2 pawn. Okay, rook c1 defense. Now the rooks activate a little bit more. a5, rook maneuvers. There is not much sense in this, but black is trying to find some footing, and now white strikes with c3, because otherwise this will be a weakness for a long time. Queen c5 will follow, and you will have to go a c3 anyways. So takes. Now a checkmate in 1 is threatened, and Magnus Carlsen thinks that his opponent won't see it. His opponent does, and his opponent is actually doing a great job. He's maybe not outplaying Magnus, but at least he's not succumbing to Magnus's pressure, and the position is still around the same evaluation, minus 1.6, so winning practically for black if black plays perfectly. Rook d6, queen e6, some more rotation, and now Carlsen goes for complications. He says, you know what, I won't win against such a disciplined player without creating any tricks, any shenanigans. So he sacks the knight. Now he's down a full rook, but he has an attack on the king. And he tries to trick his opponent. And he has the 2 bishops, which is also an important factor. Now he pins this knight, but the queen drops back. f3. This is a little bit unpleasant because the bishop turns out to have no squares. But here, black could have just taken this pawn, I think. And if you take, I take here. This is a fork. So actually, this was the tactic that was missed, I think, by black. In time trouble, black decided to go knight d4, a similar idea, but white can take here and go into an endgame. And here in this endgame, white has a bishop and a pawn for a rook. But the problem for black is that black is playing against Magnus Carlsen, and it's an endgame. As I said, it's tricky to play against this guy in endgames, as you might know. So what Magnus does here is he creates some passed pawn over there. He tries to create it over here as well, but this pawn prevents this. And he's already equal. The position is equal. But now it's getting worse because he takes one of the pawns. He takes another one. Now there is a material equality, or bishop and 2 pawns for a rook, but it's very tricky to play. And this rook is very passive. It just defends this pawn and doesn't serve any role, whereas this rook cuts off this king, which is very important, and also attacks this pawn. So the quality of rooks is much different. And the king joins the action, centralizes itself. Now there are more checks, more maneuvers, more checks, and you see the idea. Now this rook is cut off as well. And now this rook is cut off. And you threaten g5, because this rook will get taken if this pawn takes this. And this is exactly what happens. e5 happens, actually. g5 was also possible, I think, here. But e5. e5 actually is not the best move, because somehow black had this. Black didn't see this. Black did another thing. Black went king d5 and took here, but this is the wrong edition of the same idea, because here, if you take, what else can you do here with black? There is a check. And black ran out of time, but black is losing because this is met with this, and this. Magnus Carlsen yet again tricked his top GM opponent in an endgame. So there is one round to go. Magnus is on 7.5 out of 10 points, a crazy performance. Not in contention for the first place, but still probably in contention for the prizes. And he's playing the last round. And he's playing the last round against an IM, a strong IM, Jan Klimkowski from Poland. It's unfortunate that Magnus did not get paired with Hikaru or Alireza or Fabiano in one of those rounds, because that would have been fun, watching him play against his peers, super GMs in such an opening. Probably they would have punished it, but no one else can. Maybe even they would have been unable to punish this. So as you may see, there is a different plan now chosen by black. This bishop is still on c8. It hasn't gone to b7. So Magnus is experimenting a little bit, playing it by ear, so to say. And now the bishop wants to go to c6, probably. Knight goes to b4. Bishop goes to c6. And the position is, well, of course it's worse for black, but you know how Magnus deals with this. So the queens are exchanged. He's not afraid of the endgame, because he is a talented endgame player. You might have heard it. So now he expands on the king side. His knight is a little bit annoying here, and he creates this pawn structure that will probably march forward a little bit later. Yes, it does march forward, and white gets impatient and gives up one of its bishops for a knight, which is understandable. You want to trade material when you're up material, but now the two bishops are becoming even more dangerous. So white drops back, black drops back with the bishop. Now bishop goes to c3, and it's already around equal. The computer says the two bishops are too strong. Rook goes to the semi-open file. Now the bishop drops back, and there is a possibility for pinning the rook. So white takes, rook infiltrates. Black doesn't need that pawn. Black attacks. Knight g4 is met by taking one pawn, and then this pawn will also get taken, so black is already better, and black has tied down white to the defense of this knight. This is horrible for white. White cannot move practically. Rook d1, bishop drops back, and now bishop a6, and the power of the two bishops can be felt here. So white could have gone rook e1 here, but black would have just taken and then marched this pawn down the board, because this rook has no moves. Here it will be taken, and if it leaves this file, if it goes to h1, for example, this bishop will get taken, this knight will get taken. So the only move to prevent that is sacrificing the rook for the bishop, but just takes, and here white resigned, and Magnus Carlsen finished the title Tuesday on 8.5 out of 11 points among the group of leaders, with the same amount of points as, for example, Hikaru Nakamura. It's a pity, it's a shame that they did not get to play in this opening. Maybe they will later. So yes, Magnus did not score first, but considering the opening he played, this is crazy. He's out of this world. The level of this guy, you cannot find the words. By the way, it was the early title Tuesday. In the evening title Tuesday, Magnus played already more normal openings, like the King's Gambit, for example, or 1 e4 or a6. So this is normal for him. This is more standard stuff for Magnus Carlsen, and he proceeded to win the late title Tuesday with 9.5 out of 11. This guy is incredible. I hope you enjoyed his games as much as I did. Please drop a comment. See you in the next one.